All right. Well, welcome back to
Good
Mechanics
morning,
Millionaire. Good morning,
I
afternoon,
guess.
evening.
Yeah, evening, middle of the night.
It's the
Yes,
morning for us, right? Right now.
yes, it is.
We're on show number 6, 006. And today is January 9th. No, it's not January 9th. That's what my iPad says. It's April
And they
26th.
say, man, it's warm for January.
What's up with my iPad? All right.
Funny.
So, welcome back. We're really enjoying uh, sitting in these podcast seats, so to speak, again. All right, I'm going to share my
Yeah.
screen. Let's just jump into it. We got through like almost the first sentence last time. Let's see, we blow
Yeah.
that up. There we go. So yeah, we read it's an old saying that order is heaven's first law, and then we just were talking about that and kind of elaborated on it. And before we knew it, half hour went by, and that's okay. Um,
That's how we
so
roll.
yeah, I like how he says it's down in here somewhere. The way he says it. Um, see if we can find it in relation to ordering things. I've done this several times now. I've shared this with a couple of people. Arrange, like we need to arrange things into a certain order. So he talks about flight here and how the nature of the principles didn't change. It was that their awareness of them came to fruition, and then they were able to work with those principles in a way that they're able to fly. So let's read that. I there's really a lot to glean from this little piece right here. So he says, in like many other old sayings, it contains a much deeper philosophy than appears immediately on the surface. And that in and of itself is like reading things over and over again, because when it's written down, especially like authors like Troward, what they're writing down, they're only able to put into these symbols that we call letters. But there's so much more that they're thinking about that can't really be communicated through the alphabet. But it gets us thinking along those lines. And then as we do that, there's the that spirit of revelation that comes to us, where we start to get greater insight into what they're trying to get across to us. And I like that process, reading slowly and thinking about it, going, reading like halfway through the paragraph and then reading it again and then reading it again. So make sure that, that becomes a process. I think that's essential to when we want to study and learn these principles, is reading them slowly and what are they really trying to say and how does that relate to me getting to where I want to go. Getting things into a better order is the great secret of progress. I like that. Good, better, best. There's always going to be a better, no matter how far we understand and implement these things. There's always going to be a better, at least in this life. And when you get to a certain level of better, your life is awesome. Like you're enjoying your life, and it's in every aspect. Um, we, but there's still going to be a better beyond that. But it's like I'm not as bad as I used to be. I'm not there yet, but I'm better than I used to be. I like saying that, because there's a humility to that allows us to keep learning, but there's also a personal responsibility and a sense of good pride that my efforts are not going waste. They're not wasted. It's making improvement, and recognizing that and being willing to embrace that and accept it. So getting things into a better order is the great secret of progress. And we are now able to fly through the air, not because the laws of nature have altered, but because we have learned to arrange things in the right order to produce this result. That, I mean, right there, we could talk like just on that for the rest of the show. Learn to arrange things in the right order. So here he's talking about aeronautics. Um, uh, and what we want to get to in this podcast, like the last podcast, is there's an order to the arrangement of our thoughts and our feelings, and getting them into a better order and arranging them in a certain pattern. And then that becomes our pattern blueprint, just like acorn has a pattern blueprint that it can't change because it doesn't have, it isn't endowed with these mental faculties like we are as children of God, where we inherited mental faculties of creativeness and choice. But that's still a pattern blueprint. And we can create a pattern blueprint that becomes set for us right now that attracts every needful thing to it, just like the acorn does. And the acorn becomes a beautiful, majestic, powerful oak tree based on that pattern blueprint. We can become whatever we want to become, but we've got to arrange them in an order and then keep them in that order so that it can express itself. We give it time to express itself. And the cool thing about it is we don't have to stay in that expression. We can outgrow it. We can improve upon it and evolve. But that's what we need to understand and come to that understanding is that we can arrange that pattern blueprint within us. Nature, the animal life, they can't. Instinct in animals and in nature, the pattern's set, just like the rotation of the planets and the rising of the sun every morning. So, some of your thoughts on that, Carrie?
One thought I have a few, but one is that there is a blueprint, and like you were saying, there's an original blueprint that is the purity of who we are, the parts of us that come from divine, from our creator. And then as we enter into this life, there's another blueprint that gets layered on top of that. It's filtered through our original blueprint, the way we see the world, the way that we experience different things, is filtered through who we come as. And then it gets arranged into another blueprint, and we have core beliefs that come from that. And then we have our thinking brain that doesn't fully form until we're like 27 years old, it's been shown. So then the difference between one of the differences between us and the acorn is that original blueprint doesn't change. That's similar to the acorn. We don't change that. That's who we are. But that secondary blueprint that becomes a second filter for the way we view people and the way we view ourselves and the way we view the world and the way we interact with that's changeable. We have the power to change that blueprint and to make it more in alignment with who we really are and things that we really want. It takes effort and it takes time, and a lot of people in the process of change like to skip that step. I believe that when is it Earl Nightingale that says that there's the 95 who think, or who would rather die than think, 3% who think they think, and the 2% that really think.
He
I
quotes,
believe that he quotes someone else. Yeah,
a psychologist.
Yeah, that 3% that think they think are the ones who won't look at the blueprint that's been formed from the day they were actually conceived. That blueprint starts to form before we're even born through, the emotional awareness of our mother, and her environment. The 3% that think they think go from the 10% thinking brain and do all their thinking there, but they don't look at the blueprint that's been forming throughout their life and notice where things can be rewired. So anyway, I think it's important to realize that we have a blueprint and then we have another one layered on top that's super powerful and super strong, and it takes work to work through.
Mm-hmm.
The second part of that or my second comment of what you just read and we're talking about, I think is really helpful in rewiring that blueprint and being willing to look back and see what's going on, is when you were talking about, and I don't remember the words, but it was basically, you get to better. We're in a place and then we get better. And then we realize that there's still more to go. Like, better doesn't mean arrived or finished. And I sent you a quote the other day by a Daniel Belknap, where he was talking about gratitude and how it's actually a revelatory thing. And this is where, we talk a lot about we don't want to look at the past, we want to always look at the future, and we want to be in the present. But this is how the past can work for us, is when we arrive in a better place, which all of us are, we're all progressing, regardless of whether we're on an active journey or not. But when we're able to look back and to see where we were and to see the journey that we've been on, and then realize that where we are now is better than where we were, it's revelatory in a way that it gives us that um, awareness that God and all of his modus operandi are working in our favor. And that there have been times, throughout our lives where we've had little miracles and we've had progress. And when we can be where we are, look backward and see where we were and find the gratitude in the process, then that gives us what it takes to move forward. It's that, wow, I've done it before, I can do it again type of a thing. And it wasn't just me, I've had help along the way, and that will still be there. That gives us that fortitude to move forward. I like to do it one day at a time, and to look back at yesterday and find my favorite memory, especially when I'm struggling emotionally or when there's a challenge in front of me that feels super unconquerable. I don't know if anyone else ever has moments like that, but when there's like this challenge and it's like I don't know how to get around it, and the way I'm thinking about it causes me to feel in a way that is not in alignment with how I want to feel, I will spend 5 minutes every day just answering the question, what was my favorite memory from the past 24 hours? And I can always find something. It might be small, it might have only lasted 30 seconds, but I can always find a favorite memory. There's always one memory that was a little better than the rest of them, at least a little better. And then I journal about it. And as I'm journaling, I expand it. I put a magnifying glass to it, and it becomes bigger, and I start to feel really good favorite feelings. And that even in that last 24 hours, even when it was a small moment, I'm able to see that, yeah, I do have the ability to feel good even in the middle of this challenge, and I can do it again. And it's just really, really helpful in the whole, I think, process of life for me personally, and for other people, because it's a psychologically proven like intervention, in being able to help people change the way they think and rewire the way that they perceive their lives in the world. So anyway, but it works for me too, personally.
It's good. It's a process. You don't get from point A to point B with one thought or one feeling and in one day, one stab at it. It's kind of an excruciating process, overcoming the wiring and the emotions that are attached to all of that. I used to say you got to have the intestinal fortitude. I guess I still say that, but I just used to say it a lot more. It takes intestinal fortitude. I think one of the words that are out there now is like grit. It takes grit. Really, what it takes is a big why, having a big why.
Willingness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, along with what you were just saying and what it says in the book, arranging into a better organized pattern. Either we do that or we already have a pattern that is set, like the acorn, for us by the environment, by our upbringing, by what we've been exposed to. And we're not in control of what we're exposed to when we're ignorant to these things. Even as a child, we don't have that conscious ability to decide, well, that wasn't correct and this is correct. It's a learning process. And if we have the opportunity to learn or be exposed to these things and then embrace them, we can start acting on things. And there's a very wise words that have been written that says you're either acted on or you act on. So either the environment and all of that exposure that we've internalized kind of chaotically, randomly, is acting on us. It's causing us to have certain thoughts and feelings about things, kind of like in a relinquishing kind of way. Like it's like in the Earl Nightingale, Strangest Secret. We highly recommend listening to that because you're behind. He said, I was driving through Arizona and there was this big earth mover that the guy was driving. Here's this little guy behind this giant vehicle with the steering wheel, and he controls that steering wheel. And that whole idea of our thoughts and our feelings matter because that attracts back to us the things that we expect through those thoughts and feelings, which might be counterposed to what we want. More than likely they are. So he said, that guy behind the steering wheel is like that for us, whether we're acting or acting on, being acted on or acting on. And he says, if we're being acted on, it's the same as here I have this steering wheel for this powerful piece of equipment that's huge, and I steer it right into the ditch. And a lot of people are steering their lives right into the ditch unaware. Nobody would do that purposefully or intentionally, and there's no judgment, at least not from us, because we were there and we understand, and there was a time when we were ignorant to these things. But now we have firm grasp on the steering wheel, and we steer it better than we used to. Not perfectly, but better than we used to.
In the ditch.
Yeah, sometimes we still end up in the ditch. That's right.
Yeah.
So it's fun. But even in those cases, it might be frustrating for a second, but we don't let the frustration overtake us and let that be our philosophy on life. We can't, not experience those things, but we know how to act on them now. And when you act proactively, you're not acting on all the negative things. You start creating positive things in your life. And that's where, when you hold the steering wheel, I want to take a left turn up here. And you can take, because I like what it looks like over there. I want to go that direction. And that's what it's like when we start to arrange things. But arranging things is only a result of something. It's a result of understanding. And understanding that we didn't have before. And that's what we want to help get across, is this understanding. And it's going to be an unfoldment. Not one podcast is going to do it. It's going to be an unfoldment, and also your own personal diligence and studying different things that, come up in the conversations.
Yeah. One of my favorite quotes from one of my mentors as I've been, in my education process for, doing therapy is, the brain is just an organ. A lot of us have these realities that we think are true, and they seem super true. Like, I talk to people and it's like, well, but reality is, life is hard and then you die. That's not what they say, but I don't want to dig into things that people say. But we look around and we see reality. Gas prices are super high. There's businesses that are closing down and da 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 da. And yeah, there's a reality, and the reality that we assign to that, the meaning that we assign to that, becomes our reality. And there are some things, diabetes runs in my family, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That becomes a reality. And just because we believe something with a great deal of passion and fortitude, because it's been passed down for generations, or because it's just the way we've always thought, and we don't even realize that there's other ways of looking at things, just because we believe something with a great deal of passion doesn't mean that it's true. And the brain is just an organ. Our brains are not in control of us. And they really want us to tell them where to go. They want to be directed, and they will go wherever we direct them to go. And like you said, if we choose not to direct them, if we don't tell them where we want them to go, they're going to go with, whatever they're influenced by to go. So if our reality, that paradigm that we live in, is going to direct our brain, unless we consciously choose where we want it to go and direct it to go there. And it's just so powerful to realize my brain isn't in control. I hear so many people say, like, yeah, but in my mind, all I can see is, and I feel this way, and there's nothing I can do about it. And like, yeah, you can. Your brain is an organ, and you can direct it where to go. And just let that sink in, because at first I'm like, well, duh, yeah, it's an organ. But the more I've thought about that quote, how many of us let our brains control us? The way that our brains think, the way that they feel, the way that we see things is something that we actually do have power over. And it does take a lot of work, and it's so possible. So anyway.
Yeah, and not to undermine the brain, it's the tool that the spirit works to facilitate the greatest power in the universe. And so we have to respect the brain. And the saying is absolutely true. What we think about, we bring about, and we use our brain to do that. And there are principles that back up that phrase. What we think about, we bring about. What we focus on grows. So I could think about something completely different than what my life is right now. And if I follow the principles that help me to understand the arrangement of that thinking process, that thing will become my identity. And that's what we've done over and over. I mean, Mechanic to Millionaire, and so that I know absolutely was because I arranged the pattern of my thoughts and feelings differently than they were before. And through the whole mechanism of the physical body and the spiritual body working together in a united concert, in harmony, and in a intelligent, aware kind of way, I've been able to say, I like how it looks over there. I want to go that direction. And then little by little, it starts to unfold itself into my physical reality, my identity, and what I experience. But that's, again, I know we're going to bring up these principles and talk deeper about them, especially with Troward, like the law of attraction, the law of vibration, the law of imagination, and how we could wield that imagination, and how that, like Einstein says, is the most powerful force that exists, is the imagination. So again, in utilizing those in harmony with the way we think, because it's not just positive thinking for the sake of positive thinking. There's a very powerful force behind our thinking process. And that's why he used the big earth mover instead of them driving behind a Volkswagen Bug, He was in a big, giant earth mover that the wheels are bigger than a house. That's how powerful we are in and can be in our lives. Like, we have that power, this magnificent, awe-inspiring power, but some people it's lying dormant in. It's still being utilized, but in a unaware, unintentional way. So yeah, good stuff. I mean, this is, again, we're not just talking philosophy. There are principles that back up these things that we're talking about. So, jumping back into the paragraph here, and that's what he's talking about here. Like, the principle of flight has totally changed our world of travel. That principle was already here. It didn't change. It's just that we became aware of it. And this world of thinking in a way that we can manifest the things that we want is like a moldable, like the world is like, the universe is like a moldable plastic quantum soup that, or like clay on the potter's wheel. We can mold it any way that we want. Just like flight and aeronautics, there are principles behind thinking that allow us to mold that clay on the potter's wheel. And just because we don't know about them doesn't make them not real. And just because we don't know about them and we may disagree with them doesn't mean that that power within you doesn't exist to that level. The principles, like he says, principle over precedence. So let's get to that point. The thing themselves had existed from the beginning of the world, but what was wanting was the introduction of a personal factor, which by an intelligent perception of the possibilities contained in the laws of nature should be able to bring into working reality ideas which previous generations would have laughed at as the absurd fancies of an unbalanced mind. So these principles too, with like aeronautics, you could pick up a science book and totally understand how the wind goes under the wing now, when the wing is shaped in a certain, pattern, and when air is forced under that wing, how it lifts it up off the ground. Same thing with metal floating in water now. We could read any science book and there would be no case to argue against it because it's been proven. Well, guess what? There's a lot of books out there that talk about that with the principles of thinking, so that there's no way to disprove it when you put those principles and how they're explained in the definitions behind them. You can understand it, the laws of thinking, and being able to manifest the life that you want, just like you can with aeronautics now, and flight and flotation, where metal now is able to float on water. And so when you learn it, it's the people that have the uneducated opinion about that, the unlearned opinion They think they know about it because they don't know about it, so therefore they think it doesn't exist, and then they start to argue that point, and it's just an uneducated opinion. And a lot of people are listening to people with uneducated opinions. And they become very passionate about those uneducated opinions. The lesson to be learned from the practical aviation of the present day is that of the triumph of principle over precedent, of the working out of an idea to its logical conclusion, in spite of the accumulated testimony of all past experience in the contrary. There you go. There's all the uneducated opinions from the past, because their experience says that doesn't work that way. Well, no, metal does float on water now, and you can literally take a shower while you're flying through the air. So, and with such a notable example before us, can we say that it is futile to inquire whether by the same method we may not unlock still more important secrets and gain some knowledge of the unseen causes which are at the back of external and visible conditions? And this was written, what was the forward in 1910? I think it was labeled 1910. Look at all of the things that have come now that actually are reconfirming evidences of that thoughts are things. It's just a matter of...
I was just thinking about, we were like talking about things, from 1910. And I mean, it would be easy to say, well, yeah, but that happened a long time ago. Nothing is changing now. But I mean, I just was thinking about movies and Star Wars and how like Princess Leia would appear before Luke in a hologram or whatever and talk to him. And it was like a fun thing to imagine, but it wasn't reality. Well, then we went to a Celine Dion concert and watched Celine Dion sing with Elvis Presley, who passed away, but his hologram was there singing a duet with her. And now they're creating this metaverse where, I mean, you've got the virtual reality video games that are still imagination. And now people are bringing those into like active, like usable form. So it's continuing to happen in our day too. So we've moved beyond, metal floats on water and that you can fly in a metal airplane, even though those are things that are like, well, yeah, now we know the world is, not flat. We know that. Well, it's still happening. We still are defying our belief system all the time. And it's just really cool to think about it. You were talking, I was having fun in my mind.
Yeah, it goes in all kinds of directions, doesn't it? Let's see what time we are here. I think we have about another 5 minutes. I forgot to set the stopwatch, so I'm going off of when I thought we started. So we may be a little over or a little under. We'll go to like 10:20. 6 more minutes. Okay, so yeah, I mean, to say that we've reached that end of the universe, there's the wall that somebody said didn't exist. There it is. There is no wall when it comes to principles that we still haven't even become aware of, and then the principles that we are aware of. Some people are aware of, other people are completely ignorant to them. Still to this day and age, with all of the access that we have to information, it just depends on what we're distracted by and what we decide to focus on. To me, the greatest focus I could give is to progress and meaningful, purposeful progress. And in order to do that, this is the kind of information that I need to glean from and become more aware of. Again, on my bike ride this morning, I was listening to Thomas Troward, trying to become more aware of things. And I've listened to him over and over and over. I've heard the things, but there's some things that I catch that I didn't hear before. At least I didn't remember hearing them. Okay, so visible conditions, and then by bringing these, let's go back a little bit. Okay, so we read this, but I'll just start from here. And with such a notable example before us, can we say that it is futile to inquire whether by the same method we may not unlock still more important secrets and gain some knowledge of the unseen causes which are at the back of external and visible conditions, and then by bringing these unseen causes into a better order, make practical working realities of possibilities which at present seem but fantastic dreams. Like you're saying with the metaverse, like they can literally like create a learning environment in that metaverse that is so like speeds that learning process up, and in that experience. It is at least worthwhile taking a preliminary canter which is like a gallop. Let's gallop through this. Let's like, you know, trot through this and see what we can come up with. Canter over the course. And this is all that this little volume professes to attempt. Yet this may be sufficient to show the lay of the ground. One of the things that I don't want to just keep reworking with my imagination things that are just rearranging things that already exist. Like, I want heaven on earth. Like, that hasn't existed yet in its entirety, like the world encompassed with that kind of environment, that kind of bliss, that kind of enjoyment by everybody. So there's nothing wrong with improving upon what we already have. But if I'm just rearranging the same furniture in the house all the time, there's a fulfillment to that, but it could be so much more if I could bring in a new piece of furniture, a new hanging on the wall, or, something new to that, that would be of my own making, in my own choosing. And that's, I think that's where we're getting to. I think we're breaking into that new era where that is what is happening. We're seeing things come into existence that aren't the rearrangement of something else, or making, like the radio, just a little bit better radio. Taking the podcast was a big jump in that. Not the podcast, the iPod. Being able to have thousands of songs in your pocket rather than whatever cassettes you could carry, and then that big, boom box. That was pretty huge from the iPod, from where we had been with music. And we'll probably see that, and we are seeing that with other things that already exist. But I believe we're in an era now where we have people that are looking at bringing original things to improving society, and our experience on a level that we've never experienced before. Kind of like a Walt Disney type person. He kind of saw something that nobody had ever seen and brought it to reality. I think there's a lot more Walts out there in today's era. So I'm finishing up. What's your final thoughts?
I'm just thinking about all things. I think too, it's important to note that new things can be flashy and seem cool and can lack substance. And so being careful in what it is that we're aligning with, that's, and all the new stuff. How many times now do we look at a house that was being built in the 80s, the Boise Cascade houses, and they were going up quickly, and they look, but you can easily punch a hole through the wall, right? Or the floor is like made of plywood. And now we find these older homes and we find the hardwood floors, and we're like, wow, this was really well built. And then we take that strong foundation and we refurbish it, and then we make it new. And we add newness and new technology and things to that to make it better. And we're going back and looking at some of the strengths of the principles and the strong foundation things to make things better, and not just make different and more of something that doesn't hold substance. So I think it's the marriage of both. Like, remember, just noticing where we're putting our ladder, I guess. If we're going to climb up a new mountain, we want to make sure we get to the top of the mountain that we want to be on, instead of, somewhere that's just new and different, that's been placed there and looks like it might be fun at the top, if that makes sense. So
Yeah, no, we want to do it in a
what this does.
progressive way. That's my point, is in a progressive way.
Yeah.
And we haven't reached the ultimate of the progressive of how we can have our livingness in society. Like with pollution-free vehicles, things like that. We haven't reached the ultimate with that. I mean, electric vehicles are better than the combustion vehicles, but there's still other things out there that can make our livingness improve, and progressive is the point. Yeah, we don't want to go backwards in our
Right.
in our.
So building on
That's an
principles, like
oxymoron. We don't want to go backwards in our progressiveness.
yeah, we don't want to progress backwards. Yeah. So again, just like the principles, looking for the truth and those strong, solid things, and then building upon those instead of abandoning those, so that we can be quicker, faster, and maybe more flashy in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Which is what this podcast is all about.
Yeah, that's an evolving process too, and like that's standing on the giants of the greats before us that improved things, exploration and cultivation and those types of things. Irrigation, we're standing on the giant backs of, or the shoulders of giants that have created those opportunities for us to improve upon irrigation and plumbing and all of that kind of stuff because of what they did before us. So there's a lot to be said about that. All right. Okay. I think we're there. So we'll see you guys on the next show. Bye, everyone. Oh, and by the way, you're in San Diego. We could hear the birds chirping in the background. And
Yeah. I was going to say my office background's changed a little bit.
the ocean right behind you, beautiful downtown San Diego. So cool how technology allows us to continue to do these.
Yeah.
But that's where Carrie is. And I'm at home. We're going to meet up later this week in Arizona. All right, you guys.
I'm here with one of our daughters. So anyway.
We'll see you. There's the birds. See you guys.
There they are. Bye.